Welcome, everyone. Today we have a special guest, Jeff Pruitt, who is from the Access Project. And Jeff is presenting today as a result of collaboration with the Technology and Learning Connections project and the Access Project. And it all started with many of you in our room today, especially those of you who are local AT specialists, shared and asked questions about where should it be documented in the IEP? And because of those questions, those are questions that the districts were asking you. You wanted to make sure things were going the way they're supposed to be going. So we knew Jeff was touring the state of Florida with an amazing IEP uh, presentation and to the district. So we said, hey, Jeff, would it be possible that you could show our folks and take a closer look at the IEP, understand the components of it and the role of AT or assistive technology? So he said yes. We're like, yay. And so we're really excited to have Jeff here. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you could put your name, your district, and the role you have in your district, and an IEP system that you currently use in your district, that would be real helpful. And as you're doing this, we'll make sure we drop into the chat box the PDF of the PowerPoint so that you have that if needed, if you need it to customize anything for yourself. Jeff already shared with me that we have a few screenshots that are coming straight from Peer, so they're going to look small at first, but if you can't still see them on the screen by the time Jeff's presenting them, please use your PDF. That's the purpose of that. So without any further explanation, unless somebody has a personal question, this is recorded for future viewing, or if you want to share it in your district, and we're all set to go. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you. Such a great introduction. For those of you who I've not had the pleasure of meeting yet, typically what I would say for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting me yet, but we're going to keep it AT specific today. I am an SLP by trade. Then I became a compliance person, helping to write the last 3 IEP manuals for the state and the last 4 colors of the matrix manual. And we're rewriting the matrix manual again as we speak. So there are going to be some changes. I would love to be able to tell you about some of the changes because they directly affect you guys, but I cannot. I've been sworn to secrecy. But if it slips out, I also have a traumatic brain injury. So sometimes unprofessional words come out of my mouth, and sometimes things that people told me I shouldn't say, I say. So we'll just leave it at that. If you have any questions as we go on, please feel free to ask them as we go. With the help of Tara and Lauren, I think we've got chat covered. If I don't have the answer, then Tara definitely does, or Lauren. I'm here on their behests. If we don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. So, nobody has all the answers, but we can surely hunt for them. That being said, this presentation is a workshop that I take out to the districts. It is not quote unquote a training. We actually develop a product. We go through the PLAF statement, which is what we used to call the PLEP, or back in the late 1900s when I was in the classroom, we called it the PLOP. And I really like the sound of the word PLOP better than PLEP or PLAF. So I might refer to it as that as we move forward. So yeah, developing academic present levels of function for students on access points. Now, I am in my official capacity today, can only talk to you with regard to students that are on access points. However, a good IEP is a good IEP, right? So IEPs don't care if you're on access points, they only care about the individual student's needs. So although we're only here in the capacity of access points, a good IEP is a good IEP. This will definitely I have been through the developing IEPs that Fiddler just rewrote. I went through that training in October. Prior to that, if you had gone to the Fiddler's training before that, they told you that you are not supposed to add bullets or list items. We had a discussion after the October training, and now they have come back and added that you can do bullets or lists because you're only going to see bullet and list items in this presentation. This presentation has been approved since 2019, and it's the best one if I do say so myself. So, all right, now let's see if we can navigate. So we're going to go and look at some peer resources first. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in peer. Remember that not all districts use peer. About 98% of us do. There's a focus, there's an enrich, and there are a few others out there. Although the user interface for what you use may look different, the contents of the IEP are still the same. So as we move forward, if it doesn't look like what your user interface is, just remember that the headers and the places will remain the same. Special considerations look different amongst the three different or four different IEP program writing tools that are out there, but there's still special considerations. We're going to talk about evaluation assessment results. We're going to talk about data collection. We're going to spend a little bit of time, not as much time as we would normally at the full day workshop that we're going to look at the PLAF statement in general. And then we'll really quickly touch on goals and benchmarks, and then we'll follow up with a Q&A if you guys have any questions. Please, please, please let the powers that be know if I'm going too fast. Typically, since there's not a lot of interaction when we do things via Zoom, I tend to go through the slides a little quickly, and I'm not trying to rush you.
Well, with you saying that, we're going to bounce you back just for a second. And what we want to do is we want to assure everybody's on the right page because the room is filled with amazing diversity right now with our
Awesome.
local AP specialists, our ESE directors, and and staffing specialists, like fantastic. So we just want to make sure, and I also get to show off a few of our resources, but we want to make sure everyone's talking the same language and we understand where all this is coming from. It'll be fun and it'll be interactive and it'll only take 2 minutes. So let me share my screen and let's go over to our resources page. See how that is looking to you. So this is the TLC website. And this is our resources page. And under exploration, very quickly, there are some activities to understand more about AT and the IEP. And we're going to do IDEA and AT. So we're going to click on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin the wheel. And Lauren's going to pop up the poll when it's time to answer the question of what's the best answer. There's only one best answer. And we're going to just go over 5 simple terms that we used and heard a long time ago and just get us going and getting our brains here because we know a lot of you are just coming in from a busy morning and trying to grab lunch and everything. So are you game? Are you ready to go? Because here we go. Are you ready in there, Lauren? Because here we come. All right.
I am ready.
So we're going to hit it. It's going to land on an abbreviation or a word, and it's going to give us some suggestions. So for example, AT, assistive technology, is technology sold by an AT vendor. ESE technology, any item or device an IEP team decides is AT, or medical implant technology. And so there you go. And if you can't see what I just read off, slide your poll over so you can see. You can grab the top bar. And it looks like we've got 16 out of 17 out of 18 out of is looking at, we're getting there. We've got 21 folks, 22 folks. We need just a few more of you to step up to the plate and give it a shot. What is it? Are we ready? Okay, so I am going to submit our answer with the most, and that would be any item or device an IEP team decides is AT. And let's see what our spinner tells us. Yes, yay for all of those. If not, we'll relook at that again, but that is a correct answer and you have scored a point. Okay, now we're going to move a little quicker. Do the same thing. Oh, and have we shared the results or should I hit share results?
I shared, but I can share for longer if you would
No, that's
like.
perfect. That's perfect. Okay, here we go. Our next hit. Individual educational plans, IEPs, are also referred to as programs or plans, are the primary vehicle for providing FAPE for students with disabilities, an alternative program to the general curriculum, only for students with behavioral problems, only for students who are falling behind. What do you think is the best answer for our individual educational programs, also known as the IEP? Oh, very good. Let's see what we got. We got everybody at the primary vehicle for providing faith. And let's go ahead, submit. Yes, you have. We're doing 100 out of 100 so far. We're doing great. Here we go. If you have a question, make sure you pop it in the chat box too. Here we go. 3 more to go. IDEA. The purpose of IDEA is to create special education, to ensure a free and appropriate or FAPE for children with disabilities. I can't really say what that is yet. You're supposed to know. And to track students with disabilities and to create paperwork. I know what we really all want to put there, but the best answer is, Jeff, this is looking like a tough crowd. They already know their stuff. So let me go
I'm
ahead.
happy.
I know. One, it looks like to ensure FAPE, and we're coming across here and submit. And yes, we're 3 out of 3. Good job, everybody. One more, another hit here. Here goes. AT services or assistive technology services include assisting a student in selecting the appropriate AT, purchasing or leasing AT, technical assistance for teachers and parents, or all the above.
You can't fool them.
I know, I'm not getting close. This is good. This is really great, though. Okay, here we go. We're looking at all the above in our choices. We'll submit on the wheel, and we have, my friends, correct answer. So we're 4 out of 4, and this will be our last spin.
Hi, Isa.
And here we go. FAPE. All right. FAPE stands for Free Alternative Public Education, Free Appropriate Private Education, Free Accessible Public Education, or Free Appropriate Public Education. Oh, getting close. Okay, I think we're there. It looks like the Free Appropriate Public Education at that time, and we submit. Yes, very good. Great job, everybody. 5 out of 5. If we rewrote this particular quiz today, we might have included the accessible part with our national technology plan and everything, but now we can't do that. So it truly is free and appropriate public education. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to
I would
unshare.
like to just draw y'all's attention to the amount of tabs that young Tara had open. Crazy.
You are not
Um,
supposed to notice.
And I just want to make sure that everybody knows I'm a little sarcastic. I might come across a little sarcastic, so please don't take anything personally. I'm trying to make it fun. You can ask Isa. All right, so I'm going to try to attempt. We did this a little earlier. I'm going to try to make this a little larger and move it around. As Tara was saying before, there's a PDF that was downloaded or put into the chat that you should be able to download and look at these exact slides. But this is what a slide for the most recent evaluation looks like. So as we are talking about the IEPs happen in a chronological order. So there are things that occur before other areas of the IEP are written. When we're looking at the PLAF statement, the word present for what is occurring presently is at the very front of that acronym. Present levels of academic achievement and functioning. So we don't want to look at an evaluation that's 5 years old in the PLAF statement. That evaluation information goes here and the summarizing the results of the initial or most recent evaluation. This is where all evaluation goes, whether it be the psychoeducational evaluation, the speech, the language, or the AT evaluation, or whatever implement that you want to use or tool that's been used can go in here. Yes, you can put screenings in there as well. So, you know, that we were talking, and I'm hoping that this will go back to normal size. In preparation for this presentation, we were talking about the AT eval, quote unquote. Now, kids don't have to have the AT eval, as you guys know, in order to have that kind of information put into the PLAB statement. But that's one that really never closes. So it's ongoing, continuous. That information, as you're using and you're gathering information, as you're updating information, attach it into here. Okay. This is just a blow up for our students on access points. We really need, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead and share your screen again.
Is it not sharing?
No.
Here I am talking.
Well, you were good.
Sharing.
We were watching you talk. It was great. And we're really happy. But now I know you're getting into the details.
Yeah, my little share the screen button is gone.
Oh, well, try
Oh,
that.
here we go. I have to back out of it. Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we
So
just
I need to
need
go-
your presentation mode.
Yep. I'm just going to go back to the slide that I thought I was on. And you guys aren't seeing all the other boxes, correct? It's just the slide presentation?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is the box that I was
Now
this is
we
the box that I was referring to. Just want you to look at this, the summarizing the results of initial evaluation or most recent evaluation. In this example, this is the summary of a psychoeducational evaluation. For our students that are on access points, we need the FSIQ score. And I'm waving my mouse, hoping that you guys are seeing my mouse, but I don't know if you are or not. The
we can see your mouse.
Okay,
Thanks,
the FSIQ score for students on access points, you know, as the new rule has come out, 67 or lower. So when we look for that, we need to have that FSIQ. Also, again, all the evaluation information will be housed here. We know that there are some instances where we haven't evaluated a student in years, and that information would be housed in this section instead of the PLAF section because it's long, even though it's still important to maybe some of the services, devices, or supports the student is getting, it's not present academic or achievement functioning information. All right, let me see if I can do this correctly now. Yay, so here's a blow up of that. And as we progress through these slides and you see a image of a peer slide, I typically will follow up with a blown up image of what the wording was. And again, I know that this is geared more towards students on access points, but as you can imagine, your information, if you have an assistive tech eval, would fit okay in there. You can put that summary in there. You can upload in peer. I don't know about focus. Enrich, I know that you can upload, and I cannot recall the other ones off the bat, but you can upload PDFs and attach it. Although you would never attach the PDF to your IEP. Your IEP is a standalone document. The next one, oh no. Oh, see, it's going to user error. Oh my gosh. So this is the primary exceptionalities and secondary exceptionalities. Some programs, they will have you list or check a primary exceptionality and then have like, it'll be a circular button. So when you are on a computer program and you see square buttons, that means you can check a lot of them. But when they are circular buttons, that means you can only check one of them. So in your user interface, if you have a separate section for primary and secondary exceptionalities, there are only 4 exceptionalities that are allowable for students on access points, and that's ASD, autism spectrum disorder, IND, not language impaired, other health impaired, and traumatic brain injury. So those are the 4 that one of those must be selected in order for the students to be on access points. You guys would have any of those selected for those of you that are writing IEPs that are students that are not on access points. Then down here, it asks what the primary exceptionality is. This is the way peer functions. Again, depending on if you're using a different user interface, it may be a circular button and then some square buttons for your secondary exceptionality. So data. This is coming directly from the DOE. So they said that when we were writing this, or when we were developing this presentation, they wanted us to use 6 key practices, which is all focused on data, 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 data. Sally Payne from Fiddlers, Anne from Fiddlers, they use the same information in their presentations, which, by the way, is awesome. And they are pretty much in line with what we were saying here. So both of those complement each other. I highly recommend you guys go to developing IEPs. I think that's the right terminology. I know that we're not allowed to call it quality IEP anymore, but everything's based off of data. It does not go in the IEP unless you have data to back it up. How I describe it is, oh my gosh, there is a movie with Madonna and Tom Hanks playing baseball, League of Their Own, right? So there is a scene in there where Tom Hanks says, there's no crying in baseball. Well, there's no feeling in IEP. And we don't put anything in the IEP unless we have data to back it up. So when we talk about data, we're talking about objective, observable data. If we don't have data to back it up, it becomes subjective. It becomes feels. So there's no feels in an IEP. So steps to success: collect data objectively to define the student's performance, identify the strengths. So every student, whether we're going, at the most simplest rate, talking about communication, selection of a button, movement of a switch, whatever it is, there's a strength. Are they able to do that with physical assistance? That could be, if we're starting our journey in education, that might be that student's strength. Identify the greatest barriers within each academic area. Inform the IEP reader. So I just had this question from one of my colleagues in Finn. They were asking concerning accommodations, why can't we just list an accommodation or support or a device on the services page? Why do we have to put information in a PLAF? Well, IDEA 2012, ESSA 2000, no, IDEA 2004, ESSA 2015, and in our newest Florida rule, it says that all things in the IEP, accommodations included, assistive technology included, must be based off a documented need. And where in the IEP do we document the need? In the PLAF state. And then support what we, the school, need to provide the student in order for them to master or make progress towards their greatest barrier. So collect data in each academic area. Again, you guys can piggyback off of, a lot of people are thinking communication, but ATs everywhere. There's communication and behavior and independent functioning happen all the time. We just don't have a communication class or a time to interact with peers class. Those things happen every single minute of the day that they're on education. Now, we might go to a math class and there's different interactions, but there's behavioral communication and independent interactions happening across the board. So collecting data, what does that look like? It could be your evaluation data, could be your curriculum assessment, progress monitoring, making sure that you collect an adequate amount of data. When we're looking at an IEP review from year to year, often get what is a good amount of data. That's a hard question to answer, and I hate to give any blanketed statement for an IEP because it is an IEP. It's an individual education program plan, I'm sorry. And each individual student is going to come with you with a different set of needs. So there might be some that require 4 weeks of data to be collected. There may be some that require 12 weeks of data to be collected, so it's just going to be dependent on how fundamental the skill you're looking at is and how involved that data collection might be. Use your data well and to identify your strengths, the greatest barriers, and to also, while you're collecting that data, and I'll show you an example of a data tool that we made up specifically for access points, try to not have one data collection tool for each and every little thing. Try to have one that can collect, a whole global amount of information, whether it be accommodations, modifications, assistive, AIM, any of that stuff that you guys are working with. It's better to have one tool that collects them all than to have, each individual tool for, oh, he's doing assistive technology. Let me use my AT data collection tool. So less work, more direct. When you are looking at students and there's going to be a definite difference between students that you're measuring percentage of achievement versus students that you are not. So when you're looking at a percentage of achievement, that is somebody that is already independent. They may be at 5% achievement level, only getting 5% of the sample correct, but if they're doing it independently, that's what they're achieving. As soon as you prompt the student, whether it be a verbal, visual, any of the other prompts, it becomes that we no longer are measuring the percentage of achievement. It becomes we're identifying the prompting, how much of prompting they're needed, the conditions. So it's either we're measuring percentage of achievement or we're prompting. If you're prompting and then you're trying to award the student a percentage of achievement, that is a skewed performance. It's not a real representation of the student's performance because of the prompt. So it's either one or the other. Now, with that being said, if I am 80% correct with a visual prompt, is that better performance overall than being 15% correct independently? Give you a second.
Give Jeff a little feedback. What do you think in the chat box?
Trying to get a little feedback. So if I'm 80% accurate, but I'm getting visual prompts, and now you've moved to 5 to 15% accuracy without prompting, which one is preferred? I'm seeing the lower percentage with the prompt, without prompting, correct. So 15% without prompting is preferred over 80% accuracy with prompting. So looking at how you're entering that information into your PLAF statement, it's going to be an explanation issue to those that may not be professional educators in the IEP meeting, because they're going to hear 80% accuracy versus 15% accuracy. And what we really need to do is boast the level of independence. So awesome. You can't fool these folks.
I was just going to say, I thought that was a trick question there for a minute.
Nope, you can't fool those AT folks. Oh, and describe the learning environment. This is the biggest issue I see across the board. When we do auditing for IEPs, I often say that, and we do desktop monitoring. So assistive technology is one of the hot topics. AIM is another one. AT, is added in as one of those questions for the inclusionary and exclusionary that we're going to be coming up to. So we will see that box checked no, or does this student need assistive technology? And it has to be a yes for our students on access points. It may not be a no, or it may be a no for any other students, but it has to be a yes for our students on access points. But then we won't see any information in the PLAF statement that backs it up. So yeah, you guys have to make sure, or whomever you're working with needs to know where this stuff needs to go. And I've often said that a teacher of the student is typically the worst IEP writer for that student, because they automatically enable the students, or they automatically anticipate the need of the student. And they're doing these things because they are teachers. That's what teachers do. That's what AT folks do. That's what SLPs, PTs, and OTs do. We all do it. We're nurturers, so we anticipate the need, and it may be something in the back of our mind that we know that we are doing. The student isn't independent, but we don't necessarily put it in the IEP. Or in classroom engineering, i.e., let's talk about a visual schedule. It is up there for everybody to see. So, but if Jeff really needs that visual schedule, it may not necessarily make it into Jeff's IEP. So just be a little cognizant. Gosh, I keep clicking and then it goes off. We will not get too in the weeds with this, but I wanted to show you a couple of rubrics that are floating out there. This is a rubric for students on access points. This is the concrete rubric. We have 4 rubrics that you can access off the Access Project website. I'm sure that you've all been in there and messed around with the Access website, but I am going to put it in the chat real quick, just in case. And we have an evaluation. We have 2 evaluations for elementary school. This is the concrete one. There is a representational rubric. And then we have 2, again, concrete and representational for secondary schools. What this is it breaks the grade down into 3 separate sections. Remember, we're working on an alternate academic achievement standard for students on access points. And we afford the student modifications. So if we're modifying the content, we're changing the content, then we should be able to grade accurately and change the way we're grading for those students. So this is a great way to use a concrete rubric. There are 9 sections down here at the bottom that can correlate if you choose to use these for 9 weeks. So you might see a lot of this in there. This is where we're going to want to see some of your information. Assistive tools, assistive technology, point touch, eye gaze. So if you are working with a teacher that is using this kind of rubric to grade their students, please, please, please help them to understand how that student's participation mode is affecting their, we want to make sure that that's noted. And this is a great way to start collecting that data to support the need in the IEP, because this rubric is data that will be developed and used in the writing of that PLAF statement. So it's very important. If they're doing other, write in what it is. Because often we see when we're looking at grading rubrics, we'll see them use the first 3. So they'll use these examples and they'll use the level of assistance, but this will be left blank. So help to educate would be awesome.
So Jeff, in this particular case, you have assistive tools and assistive technology. Would
Yes.
manipulatives be the assistive tools? What's an example of a tool that's assistive?
See, now you guys are getting me in trouble.
Or maybe
So there's a similar discussion in one of my writing teams now that we're writing to update a specific manual where that terminology, communication device, assistive technology device, it's all being wrapped into one.
very
So
good. Very
this
good.
this was developed by Hillsborough County years ago. After the matrix is updated, I would plan on seeing this updated as well. So assistive tools,
Thank you.
assistive technology, it's all underneath one umbrella. We don't want people to have to really think about, is assistive technology, is that a manipulative? It could be, it may not be. So, I mean, it's just be dependent upon how you use it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And if anybody else has any questions that come to mind, we won't necessarily interrupt Jeff, but on the other hand,
You
put them
can.
down so we can follow up on it.
Oh, I thought you said, on the other hand, put them down, like put Jeff down. I was like, yeah, go for it. See? No, nobody. All right, here's one down at the very bottom. It shows you the percentage. There's a percentage gap here. The percentages at the very top, I'm just showing you for future knowledge. Percentages at the very top correlate to those with the same percentage gaps that we would typically see in a general education environment. And then when you add these three layers up, these three aspects of grading rubrics, then you come up with a final score, and that correlates with the grading down at the bottom. It just didn't have enough space to put it all on one page, and there it is. To be updated soon. Yeah, I'm not going to go through this, but this I'll quickly hit. This is, and we now have FAA materials, but this is what a practice FSAA item looks like. Just a heads up, the FAA materials, the Florida alternate assessments, they're going to look the same. So we chose a practice material. We had some answers after the passage was read. That was a 9th grade passage. We used a simple classroom rubric. This is a 2-point yes/no rubric, and whether or not the student needed a prompt. So we have an IEP goal up here, and then we have an activity here, and then we had to state whether or not yes or no, did the student need a physical prompt in order to, or was the student able to complete that action with a physical prompt? So there are 6 tries here. They got 2 wrong, probably yanking back from the physical prompt. And then we go down here and we see that even though if you are prompting a student, hopefully you're prompting that student to 100% accuracy, right? You're not going to say, hey, this one I'm going to have Jeff choose the wrong answer. So this is a great way to show when you are doing a lot of the work that's going to be shown in the first 2 boxes. It's that engagement as the student starts to learn how to learn, the engagement starts to go up, and then the participation starts to go up, and then hopefully after a while the accuracy goes up. So that's how it works. Chat. This rubric was a lifesaver as a former accident. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the plug. We are going to update these soon. Just by the way, there is another version of this out there for those of you that may have. We used to circulate it. It was the Collier County adapted version that was adapted for the Florida state standards. And since we're no longer on Florida state standards, we've taken it down. I would not use the Collier version. All right, let's see if we can get this going. This one's going to get a little wonky here because I had to, but this is how's the student being prepared to graduate and for Scholar Merit designations and things like that. So whether or not they're going to go for Scholar Merit designations, you could choose not applicable if they're not transition age. That age always seems to change. I believe it's age 12 now, the IEP in which the student is turning 12. But here I put Julia uses speech to text with text prediction and a picture exchange system, word and sentence strips, and large print items as documented on the IEP. So it says, in addition to academic institution preparation to graduate with a standard diploma, access to what other things might be needed. So I just listed some assistive devices or assistive tech that might be needed as that student goes forward. Some people will take the IEP to job applications to colleges. A 504 is a little better. It holds a little bit more weight after they get out of the public school. Doesn't hold as much weight as an IEP, but still they have documentation of things that they use, whether it be extended time, Braille, whatever it is, raised graph paper, tactile, whatever. I would list it here. So that way that they have this one page that shows, hey, these are some of the things that I use in preparation for graduation. And this again is that statement documented specifically, planning for graduation. Let's pause a second. And you see it's no data collection, it's a simple list. So you could use any of your AAC, I'm sorry. Transition planning. Summarize the results of age-appropriate assessments and describe the student's strengths, preferences, interests, and needs. Again, want to make, I just need to do this. So summary should include activities, whatever. With assistive technology, see how I wrote, and adaptive materials, Julia is able to participate in the cosmetology program. I'm going to take a second here to pause and ask you as a group, what do you not see in this statement? And we're going to say from with assistive technology to the cosmetology program. That's as far as we'll go. What do you not see? Yes, you guys are awesome. I'm going to quit asking because you guys are awesome. We're not naming devices here. Assistive technology means they get all the things. I like to remember my Dr. Utt was one of my professors at UCF. Charge on. Doesn't matter how they apply, all hands on deck, and by any means necessary, just communicate. So we're not naming devices here, but we are saying that there is a need for assistive technology or adaptive materials. You guys are awesome. I'm not going to have to ask any more questions now, Terry. You guys are way too good. Oh my gosh. I apologize. Somebody's in and out. I guess I'm in somebody's room for real.
Well, in that little moment
This is
of,
that statement. Go ahead.
no,
I'm sorry.
we're seeing you fine. No, I was going to say in that small moment, Stephanie Bednar shared that she loved Dr. Utt, and he was her professor too. So he's made an impact on the.
Yay! Sadly, he's passed, but awesome man. Moving on. Is the student blind or visually impaired? Yes or no? If no, or if yes, you would put down information, explain. So this is incorrect. This should be a yes button and not a no button. And Julia's visual needs or supports are addressed in curriculum learning and healthcare domains. We're not doctors, we're not ophthalmologists. You let them do their spiel, document that in the healthcare domain, then you can put this on here. And there you go. That's the blow up of that screen. How are the parents informed? Here's the blow up of that screen. Julia and her father have been provided with AIMS supports based on physician recommendations provided by Mr. Pruitt before annual IEP meetings. A functional vision and learning media assessment was administered and recommendations being listed in curriculum learning. So I've listed a bunch of stuff here. So we're pointing everything back to an assessment. If I had a functional visual and learning media assessment, it would have been housed in, let's say we're writing this IEP today, so it's 2024. This assessment is almost 2 years old now. That assessment information would have been in that very first box that we already mentioned, the evaluation information. Now, is it still important? Absolutely, because the students still, just because we gave them an eval 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, doesn't mean that they still don't have that need today. So we would still document that need and the present level statements. Does the student have communication needs? Let me ask, well, I know you guys are going to answer it correctly. So if the student needs a AAC, assistive technology, whatever you're calling it, does the student have a need for communication? Yes, of course they do. That's how they communicate. So the bulk of your information may be in a communication domain. But please, please, please do not discount yourselves because communication happens where? Yes, it happens everywhere. I give an example. Do I ever have to do math while in PE? Yes. Just because I have an abacus in math doesn't necessarily mean that I may not need that abacus if I'm doing, what do they call it? Hope. I forget what the term. I know that there used to be a class specific, not phys ed, but I think Hope was a physical education class as well. So yeah, remember that you are embedded, or the functions that you serve help to embed that student's ability to communicate across the entire IEP. So this one would be a yes. Uh-oh. Student deaf or hard of hearing, obviously, yes or no. Dual sensory impairment. Does the student need assistive technology? Oh my gosh. This one has to be a yes for those students that are on access points because we try all the things. Please, 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 if you are servicing or providing services to students, you're providing those supports, even if it's a once a year or once every other year, they're calling you in, hey, we think we can go from a 9 to a 16, or we think we could go from this kind of box to this kind of thing, and you're only in there every so often to check in on there. That doesn't mean that system, that device, or that communication assistive technology isn't needed every single day. So this one must be a yes. Where we see this fail is here. And then again, when we're looking at the determination of the assessment that they're going to take. I am long in the tooth. This one and the alternate assessment questions need to match. They need to be yes. Special considerations, student need AIM. Obviously, if the student does need AIM, you would check yes. Present levels. This is great because now we were able to get them to add into, as a reminder, if you checked any of those boxes that we just finished covering in these special considerations, those boxes will show up as items that you, reminder, don't forget to put into your present levels of academic performance. So then you would go into and add your present levels. This is what it looks like in peer, by the way. And then this is a transition age student. So I have my domain and my transition service activity areas associated with that checked. These are what the domains consist of in peer. You have your strengths, your levels of achievement and functioning, the effects and the needs. We used to have 4 boxes. There was a priority educational need, which was the 4th box in this field. So the way I teach it is I divide the effects of the disability into 2 sections. One is the effects statement and the other one is the priority educational need. I'll show you how that works. This is the error that happens the most. What about SLD student not on access points use text to speech? Yes, if they use it, it's an accommodation. It's a communication accommodation or writing accommodation. So you got to be careful. If it's to communicate, then it would be a yes to communication. If it's not to communicate and it's just AT, assistive tech, then you would check yes for AT and a no for communication. If you can touch a little more on AIM, there's confusion in this. Let me go through and we can talk about AIM at the end, hopefully, because I'm looking at minutes now. I'm starting to get a little pre-clamped. So we're quickly, please don't let me forget to talk about AIM at the end. Again, Domain curriculum and learning, since this was a transition student, I could select curriculum learning, I could select communication, whatever domain we are selecting, we would select here. And if it was transition, by the way, if they haven't graduated with their diploma yet, everything we can do in school is considered a transition service. So you could check communication and instruction, communication and employment, curriculum learning and instruction and employment, whatever it is. And then Tara and I were talking about, you may not necessarily write an IEP goal that is geared specifically toward assistive technology or AIM materials, or even include that in a goal, but never say never. I have seen some where we were starting to look at a student using a head switch to toggle, and we were trying to get him to do it independently. So we wrote a goal and independent functioning in order for them to activate their switch. So I'm not saying that you can never write a goal for it, but typically it's going to be embedded within the PLAF statement. These are what the short-term objectives or benchmark boxes look like. I have a little worksheet. You can download this off the IEP website, or the IEP website, the Access Project website. It's underneath Classroom Resources. Once you mouse over Classroom Resources, you look at the very bottom, there's 3. There is that 2-point rubric, yes, no. There's this one, and then there's another rubric, which I'll show you in a little bit. And this is just a little walkthrough of how I do this workshop with this sheet, and the participants go through and write their PLAF and goal and objectives using the sheet. So within the academic content area, and again, remember I'm access point, so we're talking about curriculum and learning. To collect specific data to talk about the student's strength within that content area, correlates directly with the expectations of the student at that grade level, because we have to be grade and age respectful. Identify the strengths that are associated with the greatest barriers. For those of you that used to be in the classroom and it came time to rewrite an IEP, there are only 2 types of students that you'll ever going to work with, and those are students that you know and students that you don't know. So if you are working with a initial placement, fresh eval, that is a student that you don't know. So you have to rely on that evaluation tool information, which may not be the best. Once you get to work with that student slowly becomes a student that you don't know, transforms into a student that you do know. And then you can you're collecting data up here. We're educational professionals. That's what we do. We collect a lot of data. Whether or not we know how to represent that data in the IEP is one thing. But I could go up to if you think back fondly to one of your classes and think about, let's say, your favorite student whose name was Jeff, and you think about how that student performed in math or reading, you could tell me what some of those positive things are and what those biggest struggles were. So you kind of go into the IEP writing on a student that you do know with a concept of what that student needs to work on. So with that in mind, you can really tailor your data collection to highlight things that student has in their toolbox already to support that they will make progress toward their biggest need. So this is what, and this is how I break down in peer, you select present levels of academic achievement, you select curriculum learning or any of the domains, and it gives you 1 box for each of the sections of the PLAF statement. What I like to do is I like to head each area, so reading, math, and writing, and makes it for an easy read. And as an auditor, you want us to get into the IEP, understand what you've said, and get out. You don't want us hunting and pecking and looking, because the longer I have to stay in the IEP, the more likely I'm going to find an error. So I have it bulleted, and Julia independently reads 2-syllable words. She is attempting to sound out unfamiliar words. She's identified words in short that she's not familiar with. She can identify the main idea of a short paragraph. She's able to read 70 words per minute. And she summarizes the process comment and coloring here by using, what's this? Pictures, symbols, and sentence strips. Does anybody know what that is? So that's quickly a documentation of the need for assistive technology or adaptive materials. Same thing for math. Oops, I'm sorry. Same thing for math. Subtraction with carryover. Identify percentage, demonstrates the numbers. So this is just the strengths box. So what she's able to do. Again, down here in writing, I'm going to show you the way I do it, and then I'll show you the way fiddlers want you to do it. They are both okay. I just prefer, I'm a guy. I prefer to be very short, sweet, and to the point. Narrative, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'll show you both versions. Writing, I again talk about a picture exchange system here, and prompting. That's about it. This is what it would look like. So this is the bulleted version, and this is the narrative version. The same information is in both. I think that a lot of people are used to writing it in the narrative way, but we see a lot of people that miss the opportunity to list some of the items unless they bullet that list. So either way, there's no wrong way to do it. Both ways are fine as long as you are listing all of the things that you are doing. You know, I don't want you to get lost. I don't want us to lose that picture exchange system in the narrative. So then we're looking at the levels of achievement. So this is basically where you're listing all of that data within that specific content area. You're going to talk about the tools that you use to collect the data. You're going to look at the most significant challenge or barrier for that student. And you should use not only one type of data collection tool, but a variety to get a well-rounded view for that student's ability level. I always say use at least 3 or more. That's just personal preference for me. 3 or more data types. If you guys are inputting data or giving data to the IEP writer, make sure that you tell them what the name of that thing is. Do not use store-bought names. You can use names like data collection, rubric, running record, data sample, work sample. Don't use observation. I've not seen a legal documented observation stand up in court yet. I've been doing I've been doing Access for 5 years. All that IEP stuff I did for 19. An observation is time-stamped. So when they talk about documented observation, that would be something like at 101, Jeff Pruitt said, using a documented observation, stop. And then at 101 and 15 seconds, Jeff said, stop. That's a documented observation. So another way that we spell observation is RUBRIC, rubric, or data collection. So you're really taking an observation, we're just transcribing it. Data scores, student work samples, parent input, obviously. Date them though. The key is to date them and make them a range. If we're looking at the present levels of academic performance, 4 to 8 weeks prior to the IEP meeting. Anything beyond that is not present. So limit your liability by putting that cap on, because we want us to know what the student's able to do today, not 4 months ago. Here's an example. I'll blow this up for you. In writing, I have my work samples, classroom rubric, student work samples, and teacher running record. That's another way of saying teacher observation. And then here it is in the narrative. I don't know if Julia's starting to consistently use speech to text with word prediction to draft sentences of 7 to 15 words. She's also able to string 2 to 3 sentences together. This is data collection. So work samples dated April 20, whatever to May 20. This is what she's doing. So I was saying that she's able to do 7 to 15 word sentences, 2 to 3 sentences together, but I'm also saying that she's able to, she's doing it with speech to text and word prediction. So and I'm being all animated here, like you guys can see me. I have included what she is currently able to do, but I've also embedded how she is doing it in there. So it doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be an effects. So I'd like to think that not, if you go into an IEP meeting, it doesn't have to look like a negative statement. The way you word it is really how it affects the understanding of it. If you go into a system or into a meeting, you say, hey, Jeff needs to use text to speech in order to write a sentence. That sounds a lot differently than, you know what, Jeff's starting to write 5 to 7 or 7 to 15 word sentences using text to speech, and he's also able to string together 2 to 3 words or 2 to 3 sentences. So, one of them doesn't sound as great as the next. And then the effects of the exceptionality. This is your last stop. If you haven't already been able to find a good position to put any of that AAC stuff in, this is your last chance to do so in this one specific domain. Remember, you have 3 other domains. Healthcare, you're probably going to stay away from. Describe the needs of the students for a specific content area. I always recommend bullets, but if you're doing narrative, that's fine as well. This is the most fundamental challenge. So in the way the bullets work is we write bullets with the top bullet in the effects. How does the disability affect the student's work? The top bullet is going to be the goal. The second 2 bullets are just going to back up the need for us to work on the first bullet. So we can look at that, the macro level. And then we are looking at trying to help the IEP reader understand why we're working on just one item. Really quick, I see something in chat. Goal sheet found. Yep. Oh my gosh, train of thought. TBI kicking in. Sorry. Well, we'll come back to that maybe. Maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, so IEP, when you're writing the IEP, we need the IEP reader, whoever that is, whether it be a non-professional educator or a non-educator type person, a lawyer, whatever it may be, somebody that is reading how to set up the assistive technology for the first time, or what types of assistive technology they may need, or what kind of tools they may need. They need to be able to fully understand it from the document that they hold in their hands. They don't need to go to the phone and call somebody up to ask them how they did it in their classroom. I need to be able to should be able to look at the IEP and go, okay, I've got a good footing. I think I know where we can go from here. Oh my gosh. So please remember, if it isn't in the IEP, it doesn't exist. So make sure what you're putting, what that student needs, is in that IEP. This is how I write my effects statement. So I have the reading area up here. I have the math area, here. I've got the writing area here. And then I break it off. And this used to be the little 4th box we had in the plop statements that would be called the priority educational need. I do add that down below just so it summarizes. Everything that goes into this area below, therefore Julia needs, has been mentioned in either the effects statement, the levels of achievement statement, or the strengths statement. This is basically a recap of something that's been mentioned before. For example, in reading, Julia takes up to 250% extra time to read a given passage on her reading level. Notice I did not put a reading level. If you were reading at it, you notice she reads 70 words per minute. In the strengths area, she's reading 5 to 7 letter sentence words. So basically, we're describing a 2nd grade reading level, but we don't want to put 2nd grade in the IEP because the IEP doesn't care what grade they're in. They only want to know about what they can and can't do. And if you really think about it, look back and remember, please, to your 2nd grade, when you were in 2nd grade. And can you honestly tell me that your 2nd grade is the same as today's 2nd grade? So that perception is a little different for maybe our parents as well. So I've listed some items here. Julia uses manipulatives, accurate, complete math equations, maybe a tens box. She's got poor handwriting, so she uses She also uses general factors diagnosed regarding, she uses text-to-speech, and she also uses AAC low-tech to complete writing tasks. We could have said whatever adaptive device, whether it be a large pencil or a grip of some sort, whatever it was. Then again, you see those things listed here. Here's the 250% extra time, large text, one question, manipulatives, augmentative communication. And in here, this is a good point for you guys. If you have that information, if your speech path or whomever is using that on a daily decides to embed that in a communication domain, it is okay to reference C, communication domain there, as long as we point it to somewhere. In her communication domain, though, she may not have things like printed word strips, letters, and letter and word related manipulatives in order to write. So that may not be in the communication domain, and that's why it was added here. Again, this is a comparison between the bulleted way and the narrative way. Both work fine. This is a statement. They both have the exact same wording. So if you're using the narrative writing, the only thing I can tell you is please make sure that you include all the things. A lot of times we have our folks get lost in the narrative writing. They write their feels in there. Julia comes prepared to class, or Julia smiles all the time. You know, these are academic goals, not independent or social emotional.
Jeff, before you move on, there is a question in the chat box to see if you'd like to address now or wait until later.
No, we can do it.
Readers. So Kristen writes, if you're using a level reader for a student reading below grade level, would it be appropriate to list their name? And she gives examples since they are universally known in order to show growth without mentioning in a writing a grade level equivalency.
That is an awesome question. I would say no. We would never write never put a pronoun or store-bought item's name in the IEP because Brevard County may not use that. Alexile, remember that we're writing this as a non-educator may have to read it and understand it. So how and what is another way that I could write a Lexile score? Looking at the second grade, you know, this is another question. It goes right back to grade level. Well, if I just put second grade, then everybody knows it. No, it's because second grade expands and contracts depending on who's in office, right? So, yes, never pronoun or vendor name in an IEP because we don't, it may not be appropriate. It might be what we're using now, but we don't want to, you don't want to hamstring yourself in using only one item. Remember that as that student grows and the abilities grow, we want to be able to not have to amend the IEP and change the name of an item. The same thing is you can talk about Lexile and DRA and all that other stuff by using words. Like, so they're reading so many words a minute, like mean length of utterance. I could say that they're reading so many words within this time frame. I could say that they're reading. So if I can pinpoint my Lexile to a third grade reading level or a fifth grade reading level, then I would look at what are the aspects of that reading level so that I can explain to the reader that may not be an educator what that actually is. So it is a hard move to move from what you've done forever and a day to breaking it down in non-educational jargon. And we want it to be jargon free. Gosh. I'm getting nervous, Tara. 48, we've got 30 some odd slides left.
Keep on going.
All right, so this is what that looks like to write an IEP goal. And remember, you check your curriculum, learning, instruction, employment, how progress will be measured. This may not necessarily be applicable to you, but I'm just going to quickly, just by show in chat now, could you say yes or no if you're writing goals in the IEP on the regular? I know that everybody's going to eventually write an assistive tech or AIM or something like that, but could you quickly So I'm seeing a yes and a couple of no, more no's. So I am going to, when you write a goal for assistive technology, it's probably going to be either in your communication domain or your independent functioning domain. You got to be careful on how you're using it, though. When you're writing a goal to use a device, you're trying to allow the student to independently use that device. So accessing a switch, programming and doing all that stuff is a support, but the actual, usage of a device is typically independent functioning. Turn taking skills back and forth. I'm asking you a question, you respond. I'm hitting a device to do the responses because I already know how to use my device or how to access my device. Now we're talking about the communication domain and that turn taking process. You got to be a little careful with where you're writing your goal. Not saying that it isn't inappropriate to write an assistive technology goal. You just got to be a little careful. In the curriculum and learning domain, though, you guys got to make sure that your teachers are addressing that they're using that AT on the regular in the classroom. It's very important, especially when it comes to funding. You're looking at level 4, level 5 in the curriculum learning domain. You're looking at putting that in independent functioning, looking at putting that in communication. We need to have that documentation there. So measurable annual goal, I teach it as it's broken down into 5 parts. So who, oh my gosh, the student's name, what, a specific skill. Now, federal law says a specific, which means singular, a specific skill or behavior. One singular skill or behavior, not will pass the 3rd grade. That's all the things. So yeah, could you imagine being held accountable for passing 3rd grade? So a specific skill or behavior where it is not typically in the classroom or at school, because our jobs usually don't start until the student's foot hits campus. So the where is going to be the condition in which you are looking for that skill or behavior to be taught and observed. And then we have the how or how much. We talked about that. They are either doing it independently and we're taking a percentage, or they're not doing it independently and we're not taking a percentage. We're looking at how they're doing it with what types of supports and when. Not during, not, okay, this is a big one. Back in the day, we used to write by the IEP review or by April, and none of you can predict the future. If any of you could predict the future, then we need to talk about the Powerball numbers coming up tomorrow. So we use data collection again to say the student has or hasn't met IEP goal. So when is a description of over 5 consecutive, over 10 consecutive data trials, over rubric samples, student work samples, communicative intents. So we're going to say over a duration of us giving the student the opportunity to do that skill or behavior, and we're going to take data on it. So the percentage of achievement or how they're prompting over 4 or 5 consecutive data samples. So I'll show you what a measurable annual goal looks like. That's it. The student will identify letters, upper and lowercase, with no more than 1 prompt over 5 consecutive given opportunities. That is a measurable annual goal. Obviously we wouldn't put the student, we would put Jeff. So Jeff will identify letters, upper and lowercase. I just wanted to put that in there, with no more than 1 prompt. Since I'm doing no more than 1 prompt, it means he needs prompting, so I'm not measuring percentage of over 5 consecutive given opportunities, data samples, rubric. The only thing I don't put in there is observation. Chat. So this is what it would look like in peer. So I would have checked all 3 of these for that transition student. I would select rubric every 4.5 weeks. I think one of the options now is consecutive with progress reports or report cards. And then there would be my goal. Objectives or benchmarks, there's one or the other. I would highly recommend, since we are short on time, that you only write objectives. Objectives are inclusive of a skill that correlates to the goal. And when you write an objective, you have a description of that objective to include a schedule, criteria, and evaluation. So the schedule isn't when the student receives a service, is how often you're going to collect data to say, yes, they're making progress or not making progress on that objective. The criteria is a criteria that is either dependent on that specific objective. It might coincide with the goal, it might not. Where I might have the goal says with 10% accuracy, objective one might say with no more than one prompt. So they don't have to correlate. An evaluation is what data collection tool you're using to collect this information to say that the student is or isn't making progress. We control plus this is what, and so this is how I write my objectives. So now we just learned something. You can hold down the mouse button and scroll. Oh my gosh. The scroll to make it big, and then if you hold down the mouse button again and hold it, it becomes a highlighter. So Jeff will identify a topic sentence at a given passage with no more than one prompt, at least two supporting details for a topic state or of a topic statement with no more than two prompts. We'll choose the main idea of a given passage with 3 prompting. So these really, they're definitely different. There are 3 of them there. I think the requirement is only to have 2. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on benchmarks. God. Here's my short term. Identify the topic sentence of a paragraph and no more than one prompt. We'll identify the topic sentence of a 3-paragraph passage with no more than one prompt. All right, so another question. Could I work on both of these at the same time? Or do I have to do the first one before the second one? Or could I do the second one before the first one? Just a quick question. You see that I have the schedule. I'm going to collect data on it weekly. The criteria is no more than one prompt. It says it right there. An evaluation, a simple yes/no rubric. Same thing with this one down here. I'm going to collect it weekly. Yes/no or no more than one prompt and a yes/no rubric. So in answer, I see nobody's responding to chat. I could work on both of these at the same time. I could work on this one before I work on this one. I could work on this one and then move on to this one. This might be a 100-word passage, and these might be 10-word paragraphs. So you never know. There's
So
no.
Nancy put in the
Yes.
chat, definitely
She is
both.
correct. I can't get anything by you guys on ATs. God,
Can I ask a question?
she is correct. Yes.
So if we were working on a more of a like a developmental hierarchy kind of short-term objective, where specifically one would have to be built off of the other, we wouldn't work, or we would still work on both.
Yeah, objectives work independent of one another. You can work on both
Okay.
of them at the same time, but what you're thinking of as benchmarks, and we're getting there next.
Oh, so sorry.
Nope,
That's what
you're
happens
good.
when I go to the restroom and
It's
I
a
come
good
back.
segue. It's a good segue. So this is, again, a close-up of what an objective looks like. Objectives have the schedule, criteria, and evaluation. And I actually write those words in my objectives. That way somebody can go in there and go, hey, look, it's an objective, and they'll move on. Benchmarks, on the other hand, represent major milestones to a goal. You usually do, the requirement is 2 benchmarks per goal, but I recommend 3 to 5 because it makes more sense to parents. Objectives are more legal than benchmarks, but parents like benchmarks better. So do with that what you will. Benchmarks are step progressive. It's not a simple percentage increase. It is I have to do step 1 before I do step 2. I have to do step 2 before I move to step 3. I have to put on my socks before I put on my shoes, before I tie my shoes. So here you see Jeff will identify this topic sentence of a given passage. So I need to identify the topic sentence before I can identify any of the supporting detail, correct? And then after identifying the topic sentence and identifying at least two supporting details, I can tell you what the main idea, what the gist of that passage is about. So these are step progressive. Because they're step progressive, you do not need to include the schedule criteria evaluation. But I will tell you, as an audit, if I look at objectives and I see that you have the schedule criteria and evaluation, you're good to go. If I look at benchmarks that are really objectives and they don't have the schedule criteria evaluation, that's no bueno. So when in doubt, write it as an objective. I could write these as objectives all day and it would be okay. But if I were to, and forgive me for going back, if I were to write these three as what I thought were benchmarks and not include the schedule criteria and evaluation, then these would not be considered benchmarks because they are not step progressive. Just because I did one paragraph and three paragraphs, I'm still just choosing the topic sentence. All right. I think we're almost there, Tara. Great
Yeah,
job.
so Stephanie, did that answer your question? Hopefully it sure made sense to me, but how are you doing over there?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I
Perfect.
was just thinking of the benchmark before the objective, but no, that totally makes sense.
That's typically a long discussion for our classroom teachers. Any therapist, AT folks, your Fin folks, your Fiddlers folks, they have that answer too. But it's crazy how often these teachers don't get out and get trained. So we've got a lot of teachers out there that are still stuck in the last century when it comes to IEP writing. This is just an example of a goal and benchmarks. There's an example of those specific benchmarks. And then real quickly in our last 5 minutes, I think, I'm just going to make sure you guys realize this is the eligibility. So we've already talked about evaluation information. We've already developed our PLAF statements. We've already developed our goals, objectives, and benchmarks. Now we are moving on. We haven't gone to our services page yet. We haven't gotten to our LRE. There's a reason why those things come after the PLAF statement, because we use things in the PLAF statement to make further decisions. The PLAF statements are the heartbeat of the IEP. Once you have completed your PLAF statement, everything else is fill in the blank in the IEP. If it isn't in the PLAF statement, you cannot put it anywhere else in the IEP. So as we're working through these eligibility requirements for assessment and alternate assessment, if you check a yes, you need to have that information in the PLAF statement. So eligibility for, and some of these are pretty obvious questions, but there are reasons why they're in there, because during the audits of the last couple of years, we've seen students that are on access points that don't even have an IEP. Hence question number 1, does the student receive exceptional student education services? i.e., does the student have an IEP? Yes or no? Question number 2, does the student, I'm sorry. It's not doing it because I've zoomed out. Question number 2, even after documented evidence, don't let this one fool you. What this is saying is, even after documented evidence is spelled D-A-T-A, data. So data, talking about accommodations. And so I put the data in there. If you select yes, these boxes are optional, but if you copy from the PLAF statement and you paste here, you're going to get brownie points, right? So yes, for our students on access points, all these have to be yes. Again, even after documented evidence, again, data, supplementary aids and services. Please know that when you're talking about supplementary aids and services, a lot of people, I'll give you the example of a highlighter. A lot of people want to figure out, what is a highlighter? Is that an accommodation? Is it a modification? Is it a supplementary aid? And the answer is yes. It is all. It depends on how you use it. So just know that if you're using manipulatives, aim, speech to text, those sorts of things, supplementary instructional works, accessing various supplementary materials, put them in there. You can always be redundant and put them again in the assistive technology device area. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Even after documented evidence and use of assistive technology, again, you're going to see the same things. I'm going to see if I can do this really quickly. You're going to see some of the same things in this box that you saw in the last box. I double coded it. Manipulatives there, aim materials there. You're not going to get dinged for listing it twice. You will get dinged if it's not listed at all. Sorry. Was the assessment instrument used? So again, we want to make sure that we're not using an assessment instrument that is biased towards the student's disability. Like for me, I would need flexible seating and instructions repeated over and over and over again. We want to make sure that it's not a time test for me. So we would document that for if in Julia's case, it wouldn't be a written test because she uses speech to text. Does the student have the most significant cognitive disability? That's a good one. Exclusionary, is the student identified as gifted? As absurd as these questions are, we put them in there because we saw them around the state and we saw gifted students on access points. Is the student identified only as eligible for students who are deaf, hard of hearing? Has the student scored a level 2? There are some rare instances, obviously, like in my case, a TBI, traumatic brain injury. We might be functioning at A level one day and then a different level the next day because of a traumatic event. And there are other instances around the state where we've heard that students that are truly on access points before being put on access points got lucky and Christmas treed or selected C's on all the answers and scored a 2. Again, it's an individual IEP team decision, but I would document that information in there. Parent consent needs to be done. Common mistakes. Again, this is regarding IEP objectives and benchmarks. These are not benchmarks. You can't write them. Let's say the goal says 80% accuracy. You can't write benchmarks with 20%, 40%, 60% and think that that is a task analysis. It is not. Please, please, please document the support for accommodations, LRE, supplementary aids, modifications, assistive technology, whatever it is that needs to go in the IEP needs to be clearly described in the PLAF statement. And with that, I'm a minute over.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us today. We did put the link into the chat box and we encourage you to also be sure to save the chat for your future references. And you certainly can use the QR code as well. And Jeff, as folks are working on that, they might want to just listen. And if Jen, I don't know, Jen, I haven't taken a peek to see if you're still in the room, but Jen Whalen had a question about AIM and how sometimes it's confused out in the
That's
district.
right.
So Jen,
if you guys
go ahead.
have any questions at all, sorry, Terry,
No.
we're going to hit the AIM question first. If there are any questions at all, I'm happy to stay on after. I don't know what you guys' schedules are, but I'm completely open for the rest of the day. So we want to have this time to discuss things, then please hop on. So could you restate the AIM question? I'm going to try to see if I can find it real quick.
So Jen's in our audience and she says, I'm here. So Jen, can you open your microphone, please, and just share a little bit what you're trying to get to Jeff for some information.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So basically there's some confusion about, because sometimes when you read the guiding statement, like in peer, when it's asking you yes or no, at a first glance, it looks like it's directed more towards our kids with visual impairments, because we see the braille and we see that sort of thing. But when you really start reading it, it just sounds to me more like anyone who cannot read print for any reason. So I was just hoping to get some clarity on that, or I'm like, maybe hear if other districts have a set guideline for what you tell teams.
So yeah, we always defer to district responses because depending on the district that you're in, they may have developed a set guidelines, but it isn't just reserved for students with visual impairments. And assistive or accessible materials could be for a student that has limited mobility, for example.
Right.
There's all kinds of things. So yeah, that's a misinterpretation that it's only for visually impaired.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions you'd like to ask Jeff?
I have a really random question, Jeff, and it's really, this presentation was awesome, but this is like kind of not related. I just wanted to get your take on this. We have a debate going on in the district. Years ago, one of our attorneys told us to put school area for our therapies rather than putting therapy room or what have you. And we've always done that. We have a newer person in our district that's telling us we have to indicate within our, we put out language therapy twice a week for whatever, 30 minutes or whatever in the school area. And now that person is saying that, no, we have to indicate whether it's going to be general ed or ESE where we're seeing these.
Oh my gosh.
It's very confusing. I've always looked at it as the location. I just wanted to see if you had
So
heard.
you're talking about the ESE services location?
Yes.
Okay. So please note that when you I would not put any of that information in a goal ever. I wouldn't nail
No.
down a specific locale in a goal because that goal we want to generalize, in all the areas. The location, I would go with what your district says, but school setting, school site, I'm a little hesitant at distinguishing between ESE and gen ed. And I don't know how I feel about that, but obviously every district goes through their own growing pains
Right.
and due processes. And I can speak from my Brevard County experience where very rarely we would put ESE or gen ed classroom when a parent was, adamant about wanting to know how many minutes in each of those settings the
Okay.
student was doing. Or in some cases, I could see where we're making the slow migration from an ESE to a general education class. But yeah, I would defer to what your district is saying. If
Yeah,
it
they're
is
arguing
across
right now.
if it is across the board, then that would be a hard stop for me because it is an IEP and every IEP is individualized. There is no set recipe for IEP writing, period. We have to make the consideration per child at each IEP. So now it's a great opportunity for you guys to have those clear guiding discussions with the powers that be and try to convince them.
I am so glad that you shared that, Jeff, because when you hear people say it should be done only one way, it does make you stop and think, but does that meet our student needs? So thank you so much. Thank you,
Right.
everybody in the room. Jeff shared that we will remain open, but I want to give a great big thank you to everyone who spent their 90 minutes with us. We know how
Yes,
busy
thank
you
you
are.
guys.
And appreciate you being here. And we'll hang out a little bit, but we'll go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you.